Hi, everybody. Dave Whitmarsh here. We're on to the next session of the day, and I have a special guest. So I'm going to talk to you all about Denise before we get to her session, pivot and pivot of change. And but let me tell you about Denise. So I stumbled across Denise as a referral from a colleague of hers. We had the most delightful conversation. And I can tell you firsthand that Denise and I have had a few sessions since, not from a coaching standpoint, like a life coach, which Denise is a specialist in, but she's helped me understand some of my products and some of my pricing models and some things that are coming out. And just from personal experience, the way that Denise works and understanding it, it's been just a really great experience, and I'm super thankful for it. So I thought I would give you a little bit of a plug there, Denise, as far as how high I think of you and where we're heading. So thank you for that. And without further ado, I'll put you over to Denise and enjoy the session.
Great. Thank you, David. I appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for coming on. I think this is a great opportunity for us to be able to basically, I want to put it on speaker mode. Okay. To basically talk about the process of change, because that's what you came here today, talking about the pivot moments and embracing change. David told you a little bit about myself. I am a life coach, a motivational speaker, and an author, and I have an expertise in pricing, which I'll get to a little bit further with everything like that. But let's go ahead and get started. Oh, by the way, take notes, but I have a free gift for you. And if you have questions, put them in the chat. I'll leave some time at the end to be able to answer some questions for you.
I will add to that the deck and the recording will be available. So perfect. If you want to share with some colleagues after or take another look, we'll help you out there.
Sounds great. Thank you, David. Okay, so guys, think back not too long ago, 2020, which felt like there was a black, gloomy cloud hanging over our heads. We didn't exactly know what to expect, what we were to do, or what was coming next. And it was kind of frustrating for us. And yet, what we decided to do was to embrace some of the changes that were coming about, even though they were fast and furious with us. And we just said, okay, I'm going to take everything that I know so far. I'm going to package myself up. I'm going to do the best that I can. I'm going to put on my running shoes, and I'm going to tackle all these changes and opportunities and challenges that I have in my life that 2020 is bringing us, with the hopes and dreams that 2021 would be a much better time for us. And I have to say, I'm not really sure it has. We still have a lot going on in 2021, even though it may begin to get a little bit better. I had a friend that told me the other day, she said, you know what? When 2021 started, it felt almost like 2020 in month 13, month 14, and just kept going on. And yet, what I do know with each and every year, and especially during these energetic times, is that change is a constant. We know that change is continuous in our life and in the world and as a collective at this moment, to where when David asked me to speak, I felt that it was important to talk about how do you embrace change? Because I think that's the biggest key in life, is learning that change is a constant in our life, and we have to learn how to embrace the change and make it the most positive that we can. So first I want to talk to you about an experience I had as I was growing up. I played basketball, and I love playing basketball. And I have to tell you, I am 5'2" if I tease my hair just right now. So you can imagine that playing basketball when I was in the 7th and 8th grade and 9th grade and everything, my height was not to my advantage. And so what I did was I started looking at it and learning, what can I do to be the best me that I can be in this sport? And I started mastering that 3-point shot, outside the rim, being able to really just dribble down, stop, and hit the mark on the basket. And I can remember one specific game where I was just hot. I'd get the ball, I'd dribble down, and whoosh, in it would go. Whoosh, and it would go. And the next thing I knew, we were up 9 points before the other team decided to call a timeout. Well, my coach was ecstatic. He was like, "Oh my gosh, give the ball to Denise. She can make the win for us." And as you can imagine, the other coach on the other side was saying, "Oh my gosh, stop her. We've got to do whatever we can to shut her down." And so as we went back out on the court, you can well imagine that I was double and triple teamed. And it was at that moment that the pivot became extremely important for me and for my team with that. And so as I think back on that, and I think what we're going through now, I developed a process that I call the pivot moment, because that's what we're kind of in these massive changes that are going on in the world and in our life. So if you don't like the money that you're making now, pivot. If your LinkedIn profile is not really working for you, pivot. If you're struggling to make decisions, becoming stuck and paralyzed, you need to pivot. And so here's what I call pivot. It's that moment that you feel stuck in your life, you're getting anxious, worried, nervous, you don't know what to do, to where you hit the pause button. It's that pause button inside of your head that looks kind of like the easy staple button. That's the big red, had the easy button on it, but you have pause on it. And all you have to do is when you get overwhelmed or you're nervous about something and you can't make a decision, you hit that pause button and then you breathe. You take 3 really deep, deep breaths. Because when we get into that emotional state of overwhelm, no matter what it looks like, fear, worry, doubt, we begin to do shallow breathing, and we're cutting off oxygen that is much needed to our brain. Because when we hit that pause button, then we're able to breathe and get more oxygen into our body. We begin to have more ideas, creativity, which is the way that we innovate in the moment. Because we have more ideas flowing into our body that we begin to say, I can do that. And when we decide that we have that innovation of where we're going to go next, we get to voice that vision. You get to claim it out loud, either to yourself, just say it flat out in front of the mirror, or to someone that is very safe to say it to, okay? And you get to claim it at that moment, which means you're owning it because you've stated it. And this is where the transformation begins. And so as we look at all of this and pivot, pausing, innovating, voicing the vision, owning and transforming, we know that this is the next best way to move into what I call the methodology of change. Because right now we're looking at everything and it is changing left and right, whether we want it or not. I love change, and I find change to be a gift in time for everything in my life, because I get that pivot moment for me and the opportunity to say yes to different things. A lot of people come to me and they go, "Oh my God, Denise, why change?" And I always look at them and I go, "But why not change?" Because as I said, it's like that growth and the transformation that you get to step into. I mean, you begin to have that desire where you think, okay, I'm changing. And they look at it and you say, "Oh my God, change is always very hard." Even my clients tell me that. They go, "Oh my God, Denise, that is so hard to do, is to change my thoughts, my patterns, my behavior." And yet Robin Sharma says it best, where she says, change is hard at first. It is. And it's a little messy in the middle because you're still in the unknown. But then when you reach the other side, it's very gorgeous at the end. And that's what you want to keep your eye on, is what the result is going to be for you. Because you begin to have that desire of change for yourself. You begin to bubble up with excitement and saying, "You know what, this is what I really want. I'd love to take a new position. I'd love to climb the ladder within my company because I know I can do more." Or you may say, "You know what, I'm done with the corporate world and I'm stepping out on my own." Or you could just say, "You know what, I want to lead this team. It really doesn't matter." And you begin to have that desire. And again, it bubbles up within you. And then what happens is your inside critical voice begins to take charge, and it begins to put doubt into your life. It asks you those questions of, well, what makes you think you can do this? Why would you even want to do this? It's kind of scary. Why do this? You begin to come up with excuses and reasons on not making the change in your life. And this pattern of change, guys, happens to everybody. I don't care who you are. Even the highest level people of CEOs of companies, et cetera, go through this process of change to where they begin to say, it's too scary. I get the desire. I'm not sure I can do it. Critical voice. And they have to make a decision on if they want to move forward from it. Well, scientifically, as human beings, we are ingrained to continuous growth. We exercise, we eat right, we sleep well to change our bodies. We take courses, we read self-help books to change our minds and expand and grow that way. We meditate, we take yoga, we do Reiki, whatever it is, to become a more conscious person within everything, to expand our spiritual awareness through it all. And it is that moment that you begin to say, I'm ready for change and I want to embrace it all, that has you adopting and embracing change for the greatest of good with it all. And so for you, instead of being able to say no, which we inherently want to say, give yourself the possibility of saying yes with change. Now I've come up, like I said, I love change, and I needed a process that I go through to kind of embrace change with everything. And so I've come up with this 5-step process on change that I want to take you through. So first is you have choice, guys. The thoughts that you have are a choice. The behaviors and the way that you act are a choice. Your reactions to life, to everything in your life, are a choice. Everything in your life, every moment, every decision, everything in your life is a choice. And you get to embrace and accept that choice that you're making. Because once you can do that, you begin to have that moment of clarity to say, I'm fulfilling my desire to change through my choices, because you get to drive that. It's not like someone else is doing it for you. Even if someone else makes a choice that impacts you, you've chosen your reaction on how that's going to happen through it all. I remember when I was growing up, there was a moment when I had chosen something that was very exciting for me, not so much for my father. You see, I'd taken a new position. It was just so exciting. And I went to him and I was telling him about it. And I was just bubbling over with the excitement that I had, that I just couldn't wait to get started with it all. And all of a sudden I stopped and I looked at him, and with every word that I was saying, his face kept getting redder and redder and redder. And finally he looked at me and he said, remember, Denise, you got to live by the consequences of your decision. And I looked back at him and I said, I know, isn't that exciting? You see, because I'm one that I said, I love change and I love the choices that I make, even though sometimes the choices may not feel like the right one at the right time, and yet it works out for the best with that. So remember that choice is in everything that you do, and you can allow that choice to empower you in moving forward through it all. Because once you realize that you have a choice, everything becomes a little bit easier. You don't feel like someone is trying to control you, an event is trying to control you. Even with 2020 and everything that was happening, we all had a choice in what and how we were going to be in that moment with everything that we did. We got to work from home, okay? We got to decide how we'd work from home. Would we find it fearful and overwhelming, or we find it exciting? We got to shift our business, if you're an entrepreneur, into something new. If you were doing live events like I was, suddenly I had to go to virtual with everything. So we get a choice in everything. Next is how. And I'm going to tell you now that when we make that choice, we begin the process in our mind of thinking, well, how am I going to make that happen. And with that one little word, guys, the how is going to stop you every time. It's going to put you in paralyzation mode because the how is not something that feels inherently able to do. And let me give you an example of this. I worked in corporate for 20 years. I was a certified pricing professional. So I helped corporations to price their products based on human behavior because I have a master's in counseling. So we develop the buying behavior and be able to price profitably so that a penny with certain products could make millions of dollars. That's how we did it. So I remember taking on a project with my boss at the time and coming into him and saying, hey, I'd like to lead this project. Here's why I think we need it. And here's the outcome that I'm looking for. And he looked at me and he goes, okay, Denise, that sounds pretty good, but tell me, how are you going to do that? And all of a sudden I became paralyzed because in my mind, that word how, I started thinking, he already has a way that he thinks it should be done. What if I don't come up with the way that he's thinking it should be done? Is he going to reject my idea? Is he going to judge me? All of that inner critical voice started coming about. And so as I look back on that and thinking about the word how, in the work that I do in creating the change process, I decided there's got to be a better way. And so instead of having the how stop us, I shifted that one word to a phrase that shifted the whole thinking process and feeling behind it. So when you find yourself thinking about the how that's going to paralyze you, change it to, what's one thing, just one thing that I can do right now to make that happen, whatever that is. That leads you in your mind to having possibilities. You suddenly feel as if you have more creativity. You get to brainstorm ideas of all the many ways that it can happen. And so when you're able to do that, it opens you up to more possibilities. It doesn't close you down and saying, I'm questioning whether you can do it or not. It begins to open you up and say, you know what, I got this. So for you, if you're a manager and working with a team, if you're working with your kids, when you find yourself saying, how are you going to do that? How is that going to happen? Even if you say it to yourself, shift the word, change to a phrase of what's one thing that I can do right now. Because then you begin to go into the next step, which is acceptance. Can you accept that you have the ability to change? I'm going to tell you now that this is probably where a lot of people get hung up when they're addressing and embracing change. They don't always have that full-fledged belief in themselves to make things happen, to step out of playing small, to get out of their comfort zone with it all, to really say, I can do this. When I left the corporate world, or the corporate world kicked me out, whichever one you want to say it, I was embracing the change in my life and the desire of not going back to corporate anymore. I'd had my 20 years in it. It wasn't where I wanted to be anymore. I wanted to go back and to help people to use my counseling that I'd done so many times without becoming a full-fledged therapist with that. And so I hired a coach so I could become certified as a life coach. And it was at that moment that I was looking at it and I said, wow, can I make this shift? Can I change this much and accept that I'm no longer an employee with that bi-weekly check coming in, no matter what I did, no matter how much I hated it, there was stability there, into becoming an entrepreneur and the CEO of my life. You know, being able to embrace it all. Could I do that? And there was one key behind it. As I was working with my coach, I recognized that I had to understand why I wanted to make that change. You've probably read things about it or heard it before about you have to know your big why on everything. And that's what I'm talking about. It's like that why is helping you to accept that you can make a change. You go to that depth of saying, here's the reason why I want to make the change, that motivation behind it, the thing that gets you out of bed every day because you're embracing change in a different way. So taking on something new, you've got to be able to accept, number one, you can do it. And when you begin to question it, you look at the why behind why you want to do it. Because as you do that, then you get into the ability to take the next step into whatever the process is that you're looking at for change. Now, I'm going to tell you now that this is going to flip you back into waffling on what do you do. It kind of takes you back into the how process without going to the how, because you've already learned you can't ask yourself how. You want to be able to shift the words into saying, what is one thing that I can do? You recognize that you've already made the choice and empowered yourself to step into it. You see that the how is going to stop you, so you don't want to go there. You've accepted that you can change, backing it up with the big why that you have. So now it's about moving into the next steps, and it's going to make you pause. I'm just going to tell you now, it's going to make you pause. And again, remember the pivot and the pause. You want to breathe at least 3 times to get the oxygen back into your body and to begin to say, okay, let's look at the many myriad ways of which I can take a step. Because it's the baby steps that are going to get you there each and every time with it all. So let me give you a tool of which to make that happen for yourself. When you're getting a little overwhelmed, you've started something, whatever it may be, and it felt great at the beginning, and now you've accepted it, and now you're getting to where you thought you were taking the steps, and yet it's maybe stagnated, right? You want to be able to incorporate this one tool that's going to help you to come up with more ideas. First off, we're looking back at the pivot to where you're going to pause, breathe, and innovate. Now you're going to take this process of next steps and you're going to get pen and paper. And you're going to sit down and give yourself uninterrupted time of about 5-10 minutes, whatever it takes, so that you can really go and do some deep inner work with it all. And you're going to ask yourself the question, thinking about your why behind what you're changing to and seeing yourself in the outcome. And you're going to say, what steps can I take toward this? For me, in looking at accepting the fact that I could change and hire a coach, get certified within it, what got me stumped when I did that was, how am I going to pay for this? You know, it's thousands of dollars. How am I going to do this? And I stopped saying the how, and I'm going to say, okay, what are the steps? What things can I do to do that? And so I sat down, I wrote that question out at the beginning of the paper, and I'm going to recommend that you do it with pen and paper. There is something about the desire bubbling up in the question within you that goes to your brain and out through your hand that's more free-flowing and has you more creative and remembering and becoming a part of the process, as opposed to typing it out on a computer in a document, okay? Scientifically, there's something behind it, but just trust me on this, that not only will it help you to remember, it'll help more creativity come to you. And so I took that question and said, okay, as I'm stepping into this, how am I going to pay for it? Yes, I put it on the credit card, but now I got to make those credit card bills, payments and everything. And it's like, okay, well, I could dig into my 401k. I could dig into my savings. I could miss a payment and that not be good. I could rob a bank. I could ask my parents. I could ask family. I could ask friends. It was like all of these thoughts, and I started writing everything down. And you notice there I said I could rob a bank. Now that's quite a silly solution for what I was looking at. And yet the thought came up, so I needed to write it down. So for you, as you are making an exhaustive list, write everything down. You don't want to dismiss anything. It's coming up, silly as it may be, knowing you'll never do it, just get it out, because that's what you got to do. And now you have your list, and you have a list of next steps that begin to feed the process again of taking those baby steps one more time. Now, what happens to most people at this point is they've got a list and they don't do anything with it. It's like the process of manifesting, if you've thought about that. You put your desire into it, you begin to get ideas, and you think that that's it. The key to this change process, manifesting, whatever it is that you're doing, is taking action on one of the steps that you've written down. Okay? We can't just let those ideas lie dormant on a page. We've been inspired to write them down, and yet we need to do something with them. Think about what's happened in your life and what you've been doing and deciding where you want to go, what you want to do next. And you have all these great ideas, you even wrote them down, you may even have a to-do list on what to do. And yet they just stay on the paper because you never get around to taking those steps. So the biggest key here is to take action, on it, because then it begins to feed more into what comes next, which is the gaining momentum essence. When you take that action step, number one, you're coming from a different viewpoint of action and more possibilities because you've accepted who you can be. You've dug into your why with everything. And so the possibilities become great. You've got many steps you can take, and now you're gaining momentum. And one of the greatest keys behind gaining momentum is to have gratitude in it all. I have done a gratitude journal most of my life, and there have been periods of time where I have been overwhelmed by many other things, and I've let it dwindle and not do it. And it's not until I see in that moment that life begins to struggle, it's not flowing so much, that I realize I let go of that one tool, that one practice. And so I get back into it. And so having a gratitude journal of which you were able to write down every day, twice a day, everything that you're grateful for. So you begin your day before you even get out of bed, practically, with your journal and list out all the things that you're grateful for. And if you can get up to 25, that's a great thing. If you get 5, 10, 15, whatever it is, list out everything that you're grateful for, okay? It doesn't just put you in the right frame of mind of gratitude, but it also begins your day in a very positive way, to where you've opened yourself up and saying, I got this. I am so thankful for everything going on. You know, part of my gratitude this morning was being able to have this opportunity to speak to you, to have the opportunity to share what I know in my life and what works in not only my life, but with my clients' lives. Tonight, I'll do it again. I'll list out 15, 25, whatever things that I'm grateful for by the end of the day. And think about that. Not only did you start with gratitude, which made your day be the best possible day it could be, ending your day in gratitude allows you to be very peaceful and at rest during your sleep time, to where our most growth opportunities come because we're at peace with ourselves and knowing that we've done the best that we could do each and every day. We're not worried about things because we listed out a gratitude list. We're not fearful that the next day is going to be bad because we've already said, I'm grateful for this. So if there's one key to your life that you want to change in this process, is to create and begin that gratitude journal. Starting your day off right, ending your day off perfectly with everything. And as you begin this process, the next thing that happens is that you are in evolution. You're beginning to change through everything. And evolution is the growth and the key to it all. Anne Frank I want to read a quote from her because she said it like this. She said, "The final forming of a person's character lies in their own hands," which basically means that now this process of change, knowing you have a choice, getting past the hell that's going to stop you, accepting that you can change, and taking those small baby steps through it all to gain momentum through the gratitude to evolve into growth. It's now up to you. This process, you have to go through every step. You don't have to go through every step sequentially. You can change it up. And especially when you get into that middle part, remember the messy part is in the middle, the how, the accept, the next steps. That HAN tends to kind of walk over each other and goes in and flows out and just kind of waffles back and forth to where you're just doing maybe the next steps first or the how, and then you go to accept. It just kind of all flows in together for you. So it's important that you do each step. It's just that you're going to interchange some of the steps, especially the middle part. Getting started and recognizing the energy behind the choices that you have, because everything is energy and you get to choose, is the biggest one behind it. I remember I have a niece and 3 nephews, okay? And with each one of them, I gave them a trip with me, just the 2 of us together, wherever they wanted to go. And the last one, who were very much alike, we decided to take a trip to hike the Inca Trail and end up in Machu Picchu. It was wonderful, except for one thing. I got altitude sickness. And I tell you this because in the process of trying to change and shift my mindset into something more positive, I had to use this change process of recognizing the choices that I had. I made the choice to go. I knew it's very hard to train. I was living in Illinois at that time for a 14,000 sea level difference, with it all. And so what I'm telling you is that as you look at change in this process, you make it a part of you that you get to use at any juncture in your life, no matter what it is, because it is the growth that you want to have. Again, transformation is up to you. You came on here today, you're listening to this because you decided that it was an interesting topic enough to spend an hour here. You created this opportunity for transformation and growth, to pivot through it all, to do the change process. But let's take it a little bit deeper at this moment to help you begin to shift from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. Now, a lot of people go, but Denise, is it okay to have a fixed mindset? Not really. I'm just going to say it now, because in a fixed mindset, you keep doing things the same way over and over and over again, expecting different results. That's kind of like the definition of insanity, I think is what it is. You decide to play small in your life because you're not willing to step outside of your comfort zone. That's what change is all about, is doing something different that you're not comfortable with. There are many people that when 2020 came on, weren't able to change with the whole process of the changes coming about. They stayed in a comfort crisis, is what I like to call it, because they stayed thinking they could still continue to do the same things they'd always done in the same way. There's still people like that today. And so that's kind of what I mean by the fixed mindset. You're in a comfort crisis, recognizing that you have a desire maybe to grow, but yet you're too fearful to come out of your comfort zone because that's the safety mechanism. You know that's there. I've told you before that I love change. And I remember one time with my loved one, well over 20 years ago, where I was changing jobs and I moved into this new position. I was fearful of it. I was nervous. I was excited at the same time. And he sent me flowers that day on my first day. And I remember the card that it said. He said, "Congratulations on stepping outside of your comfort zone into the beauty of what lies ahead." And that's what it is. Once you make that choice to risk it all, because you may lose something and change, but to step into something new is when you begin to embrace a growth mindset. So I'm going to give you 4 ways in which you can begin to change your mindset to more of a growth mindset. First is that when something new comes into your life, be childlike. Look at it like it's an experiment. I mean, think about it. When we were in school, I remember chemistry, I remember biology, but chemistry especially, where you were experimenting on everything, trying not to blow the classroom up, but you were being able to try new things. And I do remember that. It was kind of frightening to be able to see, am I mixing the chemicals correctly? And that's what we do in our life today when we're taking on something new. Am I mixing my emotions, my behavior, my mindset, my spirit, everything correctly to grow into this and not it be a huge failure? Because I think that's what we're afraid of most of the time, is that we're going to fail with everything. That's where the fear comes from. So if you make that decision to view it as an experiment for your life, you get to try many different things along the way. I think about it in the process of when I was taking on projects within the corporate world. In one company, as a pricing expert, one of the things I had to learn to be able to pull reports from this homegrown system that they had was to code, write out a code to get the results that I wanted. And I would tweak it here and I would tweak it there because it came back and said, error, you're not getting it right, error, you're not getting it right, until finally I had the exact code. I experimented with it to be able to say, this is exactly what it is. And I also learned how to ask for help, which is another key behind it all. But when you're in and embracing a growth mindset, you can see new things as something exciting and something you get to experiment with at the same time. Okay. So the next step is to really challenge yourself to do it. Most of us have that desire and the longing to change and to move into something new, taking the new job, moving to a new city, really just embracing it all, starting our own business, writing a book, who knows, or getting on dating sites. You never can tell. That we have to challenge ourselves to say, you know what, I got this. I can do this. The thing that really holds people back is your fear. Okay. We have this conditioned mindset that wants to shut us down. Our heart is our desires of everything that's going on that bubbles up. It goes to our brain where the ego is. And the ego is our safety mechanism that says, let me think about this just a minute. Do you really want to do it? Let me dive down into your subconscious where I house everything and see if you've tried this before. And so it's almost like a data bank, and it goes, oh, wait, there's something. You tried that before and it didn't work. You failed. You got rejected. You got hurt. So nope, shut it down. We're not going to let you do that again. Okay. So you have to challenge yourself, to challenge the brain and the ego to look beyond your past behaviors and your stories, your hurts, your pains, your rejection, to move past it in order to take new rest, to accomplish the growth that you want in your life. And I want to tell you now, a process to make that easier for you is the gratitude journaling. You see, when your ego goes into the database of experiences that you have, all it needs is to find more positive successes, wins, grateful moments, those type of things, to be able to move forward with more ease. So as you write your gratitude journal, you're beginning to feed your subconscious with more of your wins, your successes, to where all of a sudden it's 51% more of the successes than you have of negative experiences, to where your ego is going to find those and allow that process to go through. So don't be afraid of trying something new. Go back to your big why, you want the change, and begin to ask, what's the worst thing that can happen if I try this? Or am I going to die? Is anybody else going to die? Well, no. Am I going to get rejected? Are they going to say no? Good possibility. Is that going to kill you? No. Is it going to give you more oomph to keep going, to challenge yourself? Yes, it probably is. So that's a good key to be able to get into a growth mindset. This next one is all about our words. Our words and the words that we use are extremely important. The words that we use dictate our life. And I'm going to say, it doesn't matter if the words are used out loud or it's what you tell yourself. You begin to hear it and believe it. So think back on all those times you were told that you're never going to be able to do that. That's never going to happen. Why are you even trying? It's just never going to take place. And how it made you feel. You just wanted to give up, right? Yeah. So what I want you to do is when someone says never to you, or you say never to yourself, I want you to change the word never to not yet. You know, if someone comes up and says, hey, that's never going to happen, you know, it's just not going to happen, never. And you go, well, not yet. Because then that shift of words from never to not yet begins to feed possibilities into our life, potential. And when we shift from a negative perspective to a more positive one, we begin an allowing process to have opportunities flow into us. So that one little shift of from never to not yet, it gives you the power of choices again to be able to accept change within your life. And then the last step on adopting a growth mindset, guys, you got to acknowledge that it's not going to be fun. You're going to have to say yay to the discomfort. Because think about it. Anytime that you're changing, which means you're growing, you're transforming your life, you have to do something different. And there's a lot of fear in that. When I started my business, I was afraid that people would see me differently, or that certain people would totally fall out of my life. I even had to trick my family into believing it was all going to be okay, because they were like, when I told them, they were like, that's great, Denise, but are you still interviewing? Yeah. I had to acknowledge their discomfort in being able to change and transform my life to do what I'm doing today with everything. So if you're fearful of change, recognize that yes, you will lose something. You will lose a behavior that you've held on to for a long time. You will lose a feeling that you've held on to forever that hasn't done anything for you, that's kept you limited and in lack. You'll even potentially lose some people out of your life. And that's okay, because your growth process allows people, things, thoughts, behaviors to flow in and out of your life and to enhance with everything. And it's not easy. As I told you, my clients tell me when I'm asking them to change and to adopt a new behavior and shift their thinking, they go, oh my God, Denise, that is so hard. And I go, I know, isn't that exciting? So think about it, guys, as you're beginning to move from a fixed mindset of staying right where you are, being too afraid to step in and take that risk, to a growth mindset. You get to be the person you want to become. You get to see where you're going, what is happening with it all. So I kind of want to begin to recap just a little bit. But I do have one more tip and trick for you so that you can go there. So think about it. We started off in deciding that yes, change is constant. That's the only constant beside taxes and death. I can tell you that. Change will always happen. It's you deciding where you want to be in that change, who you want to be in that change, and what steps you're going to take toward change. You don't have to change. You really don't. It's totally up to you. Um, if you decide to, then I've given you the tools. We looked at the pivot where you hit the pause button and take those 3 deep breaths, because then you get creativity flowing through your mind so you can innovate and decide what's not working and how do I need to change what's not working in my life. And as you step into that and take one innovation that feels totally inspired for you, really digging down deep into that inspired moment, the gut, the intuition, or what I call the God voice within inside of you, of that true knowing this is where you want to go. You begin to voice it, the vision you have for yourself and the change that you're coming to out loud. So as you state it, look in the mirror, say this is what you're going to do. This is who you're going to be. You own it. You claim it. I am doing this. That is claiming it. To where you begin the process of transformation. And then you utilize all of that and take on the 5-step process of choice, of getting past the how, of accepting you can do it, of taking those next steps, gaining momentum through your gratitude journal and evolving into to growth. And making that a part of your DNA so much that you use it constantly, no matter what's going on in your life. Even to the point where you get to choose to have the growth mindset. You see new things as a way to experiment and change and look at it and do it differently, but know that you're taking one more step toward it that's going to work. Just like Thomas Edison did with developing the light bulb. People told him he couldn't do it and that he had failed every time he tried. And he said, no, I've just learned how it's not going to happen. So you also get to challenge yourself and say, I can do this. You get to change never to not yet. And you get to acknowledge the discomfort that you're going through. Because remember, change is hard. And it's a choice that we get to make. So I have one more tip for you before we begin to take on questions. And I think this is one of the most important ones, guys. This is about learning to let go. We think we have control. And I'm going to tell you now that we never have control. It's never in our total control of whatever is going on in our life. We can manifest and make things happen to a certain degree by beginning, taking action steps. And yet, if we attempt to hold on too tightly to the process, the how things, I'm going to say it, should happen in our life, it's only going to work for so long. Because what happens then is if you're trying to control something and it's not going the way that you want it to, you begin to push. And push is a very, very heavy energy because you're pushing, almost like pushing that huge boulder up a mountain. Okay. And it's very exhausting. You get depleted, or you give up and you stay in the worry, the doubt, and the fear, thinking that that's where you're supposed to be, and that's exhausting also. Okay, so it's about learning to let go, allow the flow to happen. Again, the universe, God, spirit, whatever you call it, that higher energy, your inner voice within you, to know that you're taken care of, so that you expand your world into creativity and possibilities and transformation. When you open the doors to allowing life to come in the way it's supposed to, and taking those small baby steps that you're given into action, into what can be next for you, you suddenly have more freedom. You're not trying so hard. Life feels better. You're happier. You're more joyful. You're more grateful because you've learned to let go. Because you've listened to that inner voice, that intuition that each and every one of us has. We just want to tap into it. And don't be afraid of what it's going to tell you. Because as you let go of trying to control, you embody yourself to be your true you, to empower yourself, to take on all that you've known, all that you've learned, and recognize that you've got this and that you can move forward with it all. So you move into a state of flow. You move into that state of flow where you're allowing everything to come. So think back on it. You want to embrace change. You pivot, you change, you embrace a growth mindset. Those are the things that begin to happen in your life so that no matter what happens, as change is a process and it's a journey and it's always going to be there, you're right there along with it, hand in hand. Okay. So guys, I said I had a gift for you. If you would like the ebook on the change, the 5-step process that I went over today, just email me at Denise at denisehansard.com. Put it in the subject line, change book, and I would be happy to send you the link to receive that. And I wanted to leave a little time. We've got about 6 minutes in order. So if there were some questions, that we'd be able to have it and open it up for that. So Dave, if you're ready to come back on and let me know if there's any questions in the chat.
I don't see any questions.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Denise. Very powerful. Just listening to you speak for the hour, I felt like I was doing yoga or something, meditational. So soothing, and so true, right? Just how do you take all these thoughts and actions that we know, we've heard of, and just how do you build it together and link it to your goal, right?
Exactly. And
Really
what I
good.
believe, thank you, David. What I believe in is making it easy. That's why I like to have the words that begin to show you pause, innovate, voice the vision, own it, transform. You begin to take it on and understand it. And everything can be easy. It doesn't have to be difficult, even change. It's the way that we embrace it and shift our mindset on it.
That's wonderful. So everybody that's on still, you will get a copy of this in an email, and definitely thank you for your time, and Denise's contact. We'll make sure that you're on an email with her. So if you want to follow up, and please do so.
Yeah.
And again, appreciate your time. Just awesome, a wonderful addition to the day.
Thank you very much, David. And thanks everybody for coming. I appreciate it.
All right, we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.